The old man in the wheelchair reaches out with trembling fingers toward the wing of the massive aircraft. His hand is spotted with age, thin as paper, shaking with the weight of 96 years. But there is something fierce in his eyes, something that does not belong to a frail body in a museum on a quiet autumn morning in Washington, D.C. On his chest, barely visible beneath his coat, hangs a medal. Not an American medal, the insignia of the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service. The mark of a pilot who once ruled the skies over the Pacific, a killer of men. Beside him stands a woman with hair the color of fire. She is crying. She does not know why she is crying. She only knows that the old Japanese man beside her has flown halfway around the world at 96 years old to touch an airplane that he once swore to destroy. The aircraft looms above them both, a Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. 7 tons of American steel and fury preserved behind velvet ropes in the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. It looks impossibly large. It looks like something that should never have been able to fly. 76 years ago, this old man hunted these machines across the skies of the Pacific. He called them monsters. He called them iron beasts. He shot them down and watched them burn and felt nothing but satisfaction. Today, he touches the cold metal of the wing and whispers a single word in Japanese, a word that sounds like an apology, or perhaps a prayer, to understand why we must go back to a time when the world was on fire, back to a spool of copper wire no thicker than a human hair, back to a cup of Texas coffee, and back to 2 men on opposite sides of the Pacific Ocean who were about to collide in a battle that would change everything. This is the story of the forbidden switch, the story of the flying bathtub, and the story of how a stubborn cowboy from Texas taught the entire United States Air Force that sometimes the only way to survive is to break every rule in the book. It begins in the spring of 1942 on a dried-out cattle ranch outside Amarillo, Texas, where a young man named Cole Thornton is lying underneath a broken tractor, cursing at a rusted bolt that refuses to turn. The sun beats down on the cracked earth of the Thornton Ranch like a hammer on an anvil. It has not rained in 6 weeks. The cattle are thin. The well is running low. And Cole Thornton, 27 years old, is covered in grease and sweat and frustration wrestling with a John Deere tractor that has decided today is the day it will finally die. The wrench in his hand belonged to his father. It is the only thing Cole has left of the man who taught him that nothing in this world is unfixable if you are stubborn enough to keep trying. His father carried this wrench through the trenches of France in 1918. It came home with him when so many others did not. And then 7 years ago, pneumonia took what the Germans could not, and Cole was left with a wrench, a failing ranch, and a mother who refused to cry in front of her sons. Cole gives the bolt one more twist. It groans, it protests, and then with a screech of metal on metal, it gives way. He allows himself a small smile. That is the Thornton way. You do not quit. You do not surrender. You keep pushing until something breaks, and if that something is you, then you were not pushing hard enough. His mother's voice cuts through the heat. She is standing on the porch of their farmhouse, holding an envelope. Even from 50 yards away, Cole can see that her hands are steady. Eleanor Thornton's hands are always steady. She raised 5 boys on her own after her husband died. She buried 2 of them before they reached manhood. Steady hands are not a luxury for women like her. They are a survival skill. Cole wipes his hands on his jeans and walks toward her. He already knows what the envelope contains. Half the young men in Amarillo have received the same letter in the past 4 months. She hands it to him without a word. He opens it, reads the formal language of the United States Army, reports to basic training, 90 days, then assignment to the Army Air Corps. They stand in silence for a long moment. The wind picks up, carrying dust across the empty fields. Finally, his mother speaks. She does not tell him to be careful. She does not tell him she is proud. She reaches into her apron pocket and pulls out the wrench that Cole had left on the tractor. Your father carried this through France, she says. It brought him home. Now it will bring you home. Cole takes the wrench. It feels heavier than it should. It feels like a promise. I will come back, he says. I know you will, she replies. You are a Thornton. We always come back. She does not cry. Texas women do not cry in front of their men. But as Cole walks away to pack his bag, he hears something that sounds almost like a prayer whispered into the wind. On the other side of the Pacific Ocean, in a small apartment in the Asakusa district of Tokyo, another young man is preparing for war. Hiroshi Tanaka is not a samurai. His father was not a warrior. The Tanaka family made their living through precision and patience through the delicate art of watchmaking. For 3 generations, they crafted timepieces that never lost a second, mechanisms so perfect that wealthy merchants would travel from Osaka just to commission a Tanaka watch. Hiroshi learned his father's trade before he learned to read. He could disassemble a pocket watch blindfolded by the time he was 12. He understood gears and springs and the mathematics of motion in a way that felt almost spiritual. His father used to say that time itself spoke to the Tanaka men, whispered its secrets to those patient enough to listen. But watches do not pay for medicine. And when Hiroshi's mother died giving birth to his sister Yuki, the medical bills consumed everything. The shop was sold, the tools were pawned, and Hiroshi, 17 years old with a talent for precision that had nowhere to go, found himself standing in line at the Imperial Japanese Naval Academy. The military paid for everything: food, housing, training. They took a watchmaker's son and taught him to fly. It turned out that the skills were not so different. Flying a fighter plane was mathematics in 3 dimensions. It was calculating angles and speeds and trajectories in your head while the world spun around you. It was the same precision that went into building a watch, except instead of measuring seconds, you were measuring the distance between life and death. The other pilots called him Tokei, the clock, because Hiroshi Tanaka never made a mistake in the air. His calculations were always perfect. His timing was always exact. By 1942, he has 17 confirmed kills. He wears a red stripe on the fuselage of his Mitsubishi A6M0, the mark of a squadron leader. He is one of the most feared pilots in the Pacific. But tonight, on the eve of his deployment to New Guinea, Hiroshi is not thinking about killing. He is sitting before his family altar, holding the pocket watch that his father made with his own hands, the last piece of the old life that he still possesses. His sister Yuki stands behind him. She is 18 now, training to be a nurse at Tokyo General Hospital. She has their mother's eyes. Soft, questioning, worried. "Will you come back?" she asks. Hiroshi turns the watch over in his hands. The brass is worn smooth from years of handling. The mechanism inside still keeps perfect time. It has never lost a second. "This watch has never been wrong," he says, "and neither will I." He hands it to her. "Keep this safe until I return." She takes it with trembling hands. She wants to believe him. She wants to trust in the precision that has always defined her brother. But she has seen the newspapers. She has read the casualty reports. She knows that precision means nothing when the sky is full of fire. Hiroshi sees her doubt. He reaches out and touches her cheek. "There is something I have never told you," he says. "Something that happened in China 5 years ago." He tells her about the American pilot he shot down over Nanjing. A volunteer with the Flying Tigers, one of those crazy Americans who came to fight for China before their own country entered the war. The American ejected safely and was captured by Japanese ground forces. That night, Hiroshi snuck into the prisoner holding area. He carried a chocolate bar and a canteen of water. Actions that could have gotten him executed for treason. The American looked at him with confusion. Why, he asked. Hiroshi did not speak English, but he understood the question, and he did not have an answer. He only knew that the man in front of him was not a monster. He was just a man who was far from home fighting for something he believed in. Just like Hiroshi, he left the food and water and turned to go. And as he reached the door, the American spoke again. "Someday the war will end, and we will just be men." Hiroshi has never forgotten those words. 5 years later, he still does not know what they mean. But he carries them with him every time he climbs into the cockpit. A small doubt, a tiny crack in the certainty that has defined his life. He does not tell Yuki this part. He only tells her that he met an American once, and that the American was not what he expected. Perhaps, he says, when this is over, things will be different. Yuki holds the watch against her heart. She does not believe him, but she loves him too much to say so. While Cole Thornton was learning to fly, and Hiroshi Tanaka was sharpening his skills over China, a group of engineers on Long Island were wrestling with an impossible problem. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt was the largest, heaviest single-engine fighter ever built. It was a monster of a machine, nearly 7 tons fully loaded, powered by a Pratt& Whitney R2800 double wasp engine with 18 cylinders arranged in 2 rows like the teeth of some mechanical god. On paper, it was magnificent. 2,000 horsepower, 850 caliber machine guns, armor plating thick enough to stop a cannon shell, self-sealing fuel tanks that would not explode when punctured. A pilot could survive things in a P-47 that would kill him instantly in any other aircraft. But there was a problem that the engineers could see in the numbers, but that the pilots were discovering in blood. To push 7 tons of metal through the air at combat speeds, you needed every single one of those 2,000 horses. There was no reserve, no emergency power. When a Japanese Zero latched onto your tail and you shoved the throttle forward, begging for more speed, more power, more anything, the needle would hit the red line and stop. You were already at maximum. You had nothing left to give. And the Zero was not made of 7 tons of steel. It was made of lightweight aluminum and prayers. It weighed barely 2.5 tons. It could turn on a dime. It could climb like a homesick angel. It could dance around a P-47 like a matador around a bull, and there was nothing the American pilots could do except dive for the deck and pray. The loss rates were catastrophic. In the first 6 months of Pacific combat, P-47 squadrons were losing planes faster than the factories could build them. Frank Novak knew there had to be a solution. Novak was chief engineer at Republic Aviation, a Czech immigrant who had come to America in 1920 with $50 in his pocket and a head full of dreams. He had worked his way up from the assembly line to the drafting table to the corner office through pure, stubborn brilliance. The American dream made flesh. He knew the R2800 engine better than anyone alive. He knew its limits. He knew its potential. And he knew that it was capable of producing 2,800 horsepower instead of 2,000, a 40% increase that could turn the P-47 from a flying coffin into a predator. The problem was heat. To get more power, you need to burn more fuel. To burn more fuel, you need to cram more air into the cylinders. But compressed air gets hot, dangerously hot. And when the temperature inside a cylinder gets too high, the fuel does not burn in a controlled manner. It detonates. It explodes all at once like a bomb going off inside your engine. The term for this is knock. It sounds like someone hitting the engine block with a hammer. And if it goes on for more than a few seconds, the pistons melt, the cylinder heads crack, and your $2 million aircraft becomes a fireball. Every engineer in America knew this was an unsolvable problem. You could not add more power without adding more heat, and you could not reduce the heat without reducing the power. It was a closed loop, a dead end. But Frank Novak remembered something from his childhood in Prague. His father had been a brewer. One summer, the cooling system at the brewery failed during a heat wave. The beer was about to spoil, and his father, in desperation, had poured alcohol into the cooling water. Alcohol evaporates faster than water, his father explained. When it evaporates, it absorbs heat from everything around it. It is like a chemical ice pack. 20 years later, standing in front of a blueprint of the R2800, Frank Novak had his eureka moment. What if you sprayed a mixture of water and alcohol directly into the engine? The water would flash into steam instantly when it hit the superheated air inside the cylinders. And when water turns to steam, it absorbs an enormous amount of heat. It was so simple, it was almost stupid. You could cool the combustion chamber by hundreds of degrees in a fraction of a second. And with the temperature under control, you could cram in far more air, far more fuel, far more power without melting the engine. Novak ran the numbers 3 times before he believed them. Water and methanol injection could boost the P-47 from 2,000 to 2,800 horsepower. It could turn the flying bathtub into a rocket ship. He rushed his findings to the Army Air Force High Command. He expected medals. He expected congratulations. He expected to be hailed as the man who saved American air power in the Pacific. Instead, he nearly ended up in prison. The generals listened to his presentation with growing horror. They heard the potential. They also heard the risks. If the water tank ran dry while the pilot was at full power, the cooling effect would vanish instantly. The engine would detonate before the pilot could even reach for the throttle. 3 seconds from empty tank to fireball. No warning, no second chances. And there was another problem, a problem that had nothing to do with engineering and everything to do with human nature. The mixture was 50% methanol, wood alcohol. In the remote jungle bases of the Pacific where supplies were scarce and boredom was infinite, 50 gallons of alcohol was not an engineering fluid. It was temptation incarnate. The brass had heard the stories. Ground crews filtering the mixture through bread loaves to remove the worst of the poisons. Men going blind from drinking engine coolant. Entire squadrons incapacitated because someone had drained the water injection tanks for a Saturday night party. The order came down from Washington with the force of a thunderbolt. The system would be installed, but it would be locked. A thin copper wire would be wrapped around the activation switch, sealed with an official military tag. Breaking that wire would require the pilot to file a report explaining why he had destroyed government property. It would be grounds for court-martial. Career ending, possibly prison time. The engineers had given the pilots a weapon that could save their lives, and the generals had wrapped it in chains. By September of 1943, Cole Thornton has been flying P-47s for 8 months. He has trained in Georgia, deployed through Hawaii, and finally arrived at Port Moresby, New Guinea, the forward operating base for American air power in the Southwest Pacific. Port Moresby is hell on earth. The temperature hovers around 100 degrees. The humidity is so high that mold grows on everything, including the pilots. Malaria is endemic, dysentery is expected, and the mosquitoes are so thick that you can hear them humming like a choir of tiny demons. The first thing Cole sees when he steps off the transport plane is a wrecked P-47 being dragged back to the maintenance area by a jeep. The cockpit is splashed with blood. The canopy is gone. There is no pilot. A massive hand lands on his shoulder. Cole turns to find himself face to face with the largest human being he has ever seen outside of a rodeo. The man is built like a grain silo with hands the size of dinner plates and a voice like a cement mixer. "You, Thornton," the giant asks. "Yes, sir." "I am not a sir. I work for a living. Name is Kowalski. Pete Kowalski. They call me Wrench. I am your crew chief." Cole looks at the wrecked P-47. Kowalski follows his gaze. "Do not look at that," Wrench says. "Look at me. I keep you alive. You keep my airplane alive. We have a deal." "Understand," Cole nods. "Good. Now come with me. I'm going to show you something that you are never allowed to touch." The hangar is sweltering, lit by buzzing fluorescent lights that cast everything in a sickly yellow glow. Kowalski leads Cole to a brand new P-47, fresh from the factory, still smelling of paint and machine oil. He climbs up onto the wing and opens the cockpit, pointing at a small switch on the left side of the throttle quadrant. The switch is wrapped in a thin copper wire sealed with a small lead tag stamped with official military markings. "You see this?" Kowalski asks. Cole leans in. "The wire. That wire locks the water injection switch. You flip that switch, your engine goes from 2,000 to 2,800 horsepower. You will climb faster than a zero. You will be the king of the sky." Cole looks at the wire again. "So why is it locked?" "Because if you run out of water while you are at full power, the engine explodes. 3 seconds, no warning, boom. You become a Roman candle." Cole says nothing. Kowalski continues. "And there is another thing. The mixture in the tank is 50% alcohol. Some of the boys figured out how to filter it and drink it. 3 guys in the hospital last week. One of them is blind now, so the brass locked it up." Kowalski spits on the hangar floor. "The brass locked it up because they are more afraid of paperwork than they are of Japanese fighters. You touch that switch, you have to explain why. And nobody wants to explain anything to a general." Cole reaches out and touches the copper wire. It is thin, fragile. It looks like it would snap with barely any pressure. Has anyone ever broken it? Kowalski shakes his head. "Not that I know of. Everyone is too scared. Of the generals, of the engine blowing up. Of everything." Cole pulls his hand back. The wire gleams in the fluorescent light like a challenge. "What would you do?" he asks. "If you were up there and you needed that power." Kowalski is silent for a long moment. Then he looks Cole dead in the eyes. "I would ask myself one question, Thornton. Is living worth more than my career? And then I would act accordingly." He climbs down from the wing and walks toward the hangar door. Over his shoulder, he adds one more thing. "Your first mission is tomorrow, 0600. Try not to die." Across New Guinea at the Japanese air base in Rabaul, Captain Hiroshi Tanaka is briefing his pilots on the American P-47. He stands in front of a chalkboard covered in diagrams and numbers, his red stripe visible on the shoulder of his flight suit. His squadron listens with the intensity of men who know that the wrong information can kill them. The Americans call it the Jug, Tanaka says, short for Juggernaut. It is the largest single-engine fighter in the world, nearly 7 tons fully loaded. He draws a simple outline of the P-47 next to a zero. The size difference is almost comical. It carries 850 caliber machine guns, more firepower than any fighter in the Pacific. Its armor can stop a 20-millimeter shell. Its fuel tanks seal themselves when punctured. A young pilot raises his hand. It sounds formidable, Captain. Tanaka shakes his head. It is not. It is slow. It is heavy. If they turn, they die. Our zero weighs less than half as much. We can outclimb them. We can outturn them. We can be on their tail before they even know we are there somehow. He taps the chalkboard. The only thing you must never do is let them get above you. If they dive, they are deadly. At high speed, they become missiles. But getting above us requires climbing. And the P-47 climbs like an old woman walking uphill. Laughter ripples through the room. The young pilots relax. The monster does not seem so monstrous anymore. But Tanaka does not laugh. He stares at the chalkboard with something that looks almost like doubt. Do not underestimate them, he says quietly. The Americans are not stupid. They know their weakness. And they are working on something. I can feel it. The pilots exchange glances. What do you mean? Captain Tanaka does not answer. He only looks out the window at the darkening sky, remembering the words of an American pilot 5 years ago in China. Someday the war will end, and we will just be men. He wonders what that man is doing now. He wonders if he is still alive. He wonders if they will ever meet again. Probably not, he thinks. Probably never. But he cannot shake the feeling that something is about to change. That the rules he has lived by are about to be rewritten. That somewhere out there, an American pilot is looking at the same sky and thinking the same thoughts. He does not know about Cole Thornton. He does not know about the copper wire. He does not know that in 3 weeks, everything he believes about the P-47 will be proven wrong. All he knows is that the war is not over yet. And until it is, he will keep flying, keep fighting, keep surviving. That is all any of them can do. The night before everything changes, Cole Thornton cannot sleep. It is 4:30 in the morning on October 10th, 1943. In 90 minutes, the sun will rise over Port Moresby and another day of war will begin. But Cole is not in his bunk. He is sitting in the cockpit of his P-47 staring at the copper wire that has haunted his dreams for 3 weeks. The jungle is never quiet. Tree frogs scream their mating calls into the darkness. Insects hum and buzz and click in an endless symphony of tiny lives. Somewhere in the distance, a generator coughs and sputters, providing electricity for the base operations building, where the mission planners are already awake, already drawing lines on maps, already deciding who will live and who will die. Cole does not care about the mission planners. He does not care about the maps or the objectives or the tonnage of bombs that need to be dropped on enemy positions. He cares about only one thing, the copper wire. It gleams faintly in the moonlight wrapped around the water injection switch like a tiny prison. Such a small thing, thinner than a strand of hair. He could break it with his pinky finger. He could snap it right now and no one would ever know until the debrief after the mission. But breaking it means admitting that the rules are wrong. Breaking it means trusting his own judgment over the judgment of generals who have never sat in a cockpit while tracers streak past their head. Breaking it means risking everything he has worked for, everything he has survived, on a system that might just as easily kill him as save him. He pulls his father's wrench from his flight suit pocket. The metal is warm from his body heat. He turns it over in his hands, feeling the worn edges, the slight rust spots that he has never quite been able to remove. Dad, he whispers into the darkness, you always said nothing is unfixable. But what if the thing that is broken is the rules themselves? What if the only way to fix this is to break something else first? No answer comes from the jungle night. His father has been dead for 12 years. The wrench is just a wrench, but somehow holding it makes Cole feel less alone. He thinks about Jimmy, 21 years old, married for 3 months before shipping out. His wife is pregnant back in Ohio. She does not know yet that she is going to raise that child alone. The telegram probably arrived yesterday. Cole can picture her face when she opened it. He has seen that face on his own mother twice when his brothers did not come home. Jimmy died because Cole followed the rules. Jimmy died because Cole kept the throttle below the red line, kept the manifold pressure at 52 inches, kept the copper wire intact while a Zero put 20-millimeter shells through his wingman's cockpit. Maybe if Cole had broken the wire, maybe if he had pushed the throttle through the gate, maybe if he had found those extra 800 horsepower, he could have gotten there in time. Maybe Jimmy would still be alive. Or maybe Cole would be dead too. Maybe the engine would have exploded. Maybe the generals are right and the system is too dangerous to use. Maybe the copper wire is not a prison. Maybe it is a shield. He does not know. That is the worst part. He does not know. Footsteps crunch on the gravel outside the hangar. Cole looks up to see Kowalski approaching, carrying 2 tin cups that steam in the cool pre-dawn air. The big crew chief climbs up onto the wing and hands 1 cup to Cole. The smell hits him immediately. Coffee. Real coffee. Not the watered-down swamp water they usually serve in the mess hall. This is the good stuff, dark and bitter, and strong enough to wake the dead. You are not sleeping, Kowalski says. It is not a question. Cannot sleep, Cole replies. Keep seeing their faces. Kowalski nods. He does not ask whose faces. He does not need to. Every pilot sees them eventually. The ones who did not come back. The empty bunks. The personal effects shipped home in cardboard boxes. They sit in silence for a while, sipping their coffee, watching the stars fade as the eastern horizon begins to lighten. Finally, Cole speaks. Tomorrow I am going to break the wire. Kowalski does not react. He just takes another sip of his coffee and stares out at the darkness. I know, he says. You know, I have watched you looking at that switch every day for 3 weeks. I have seen the way your hand reaches for it during pre-flight checks. I have seen you staring at the wreckage when they bring back the birds that did not make it. You have been building up to this since the day you arrived. Cole looks at the copper wire again. If I break it and the engine blows, then you will die, Kowalski finishes. But you might die anyway. At least this way, you die trying. Have you ever seen anyone use it, the water injection? Kowalski shakes his head. Not here, but I heard stories from the boys in Europe. They say it works. They say the engines hold together if you do not push it too long. 7 minutes, maybe 8, before you have to back off or risk cooking the cylinders. 7 minutes. That is a lifetime in a dogfight. That is enough time to climb above a Zero. That is enough time to turn a losing battle into a winning one. Cole drains the last of his coffee. The bitter taste lingers on his tongue. Kowalski, I need you to check the water injection system. Make sure it works. Make sure the tank is full. The crew chief looks at him for a long moment. Then he nods. Already done. Checked it last night. 15 gallons, enough for about 7.5 minutes at full power. She is ready when you are. Cole reaches out and shakes Kowalski's hand. The big man's grip is firm and calloused from years of working on engines. Thank you, Cole says. Do not thank me yet, Kowalski replies. Thank me when you come back alive. And Thornton, do not forget. 3 seconds. If that tank runs dry while you are at full power, you have 3 seconds before the engine goes. Do not forget. I will not forget. Kowalski climbs down from the wing and disappears into the darkness. Cole stays in the cockpit, watching the sunrise begin to paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. In a few hours, that sky will be filled with smoke and tracers and the screams of dying engines. But for now, it is beautiful. For now, it is peaceful. Cole reaches out and touches the copper wire one last time. Not yet, he whispers, but soon. 800 miles to the northwest in a bamboo barracks at the Japanese air base in Rabaul, Hiroshi Tanaka is writing in his journal by candlelight. The entry is dated October 10th, 1943. The handwriting is precise and elegant, each character formed with the same careful attention that his father brought to watchmaking. Tomorrow will be a big battle, he writes. Intelligence reports that the Americans will launch a major strike against WWII. I will lead 14 Zeros and 6 Key 61 Tonys to intercept. He pauses, the brush hovering over the paper. Outside, he can hear the other pilots laughing and joking, burning off nervous energy before the mission. They are young. Most of them have less than 50 hours of combat flight time. They still believe in the invincibility of the Japanese fighter pilot. They still believe that skill and spirit can overcome any enemy. Tanaka believed that once, before China. Before the American pilot who looked at him like a fellow human being instead of a monster. Before the chocolate bar and the canteen of water that he still cannot explain even to himself. He continues writing. I have faced the P-47 many times. They are large and slow and predictable. If we maintain altitude advantage, we will win. This is simple mathematics. But tonight I have a strange feeling, like something is about to change, like the rules I have trusted are about to become meaningless. He thinks about the American fighters he has encountered over the past month. They have been behaving differently, more aggressive, more willing to engage even when outnumbered. It is as if they are waiting for something, testing, probing, preparing. The Americans are not stupid, he writes. They know their weakness, and they are working to fix it. I do not know what they are planning, but I can feel it coming. The sky is about to change. He sets down his brush and reaches for the small wooden box beside his sleeping mat. Inside is a photograph of his sister Yuki, taken before he deployed. She is smiling in the picture wearing a nurse's uniform, looking young and hopeful, and completely unaware of the horrors that her brother sees every time he closes his eyes. Yuki sent a letter last week, he writes. She asked if I am afraid. I did not know how to answer. Fear is not something we are supposed to feel. But every night I wonder how many more men must die before we can all go home. He looks at the photograph for a long moment. Then he closes the box and blows out the candle. Tomorrow he will climb into his Zero and fly toward the enemy. Tomorrow he will try to kill as many Americans as possible. Tomorrow he will be the clock, precise and deadly, a weapon of the Emperor. But tonight in the darkness of his barracks, Hiroshi Tanaka is just a man who misses his sister and wonders if he will ever see her again. The morning of October 11th dawns hot and humid, the sun rising like a blood orange over the jungle canopy. At Port Moresby, 12 P-47 Thunderbolts taxi toward the runway and align their massive engines, growling and coughing as they warm up. Cole Thornton sits in the lead aircraft call sign Ramrod 1. His wingman is Bobby Crawford, a lanky pilot from Alabama who everyone calls Bama. Bama has a mustache that looks like a cat died on his lip and a drawl so thick you could spread it on biscuits. He also has 9 confirmed kills and nerves made of solid steel. Hey, hardhead. Bama's voice crackles over the radio. You seem different today. Something on your mind. Cole looks at the copper wire. It gleams in the morning light waiting. Today is going to be different, Bama. Different how I'm going to do something crazy. There is a pause on the radio, then Bama laughs that long, slow Alabama laugh that sounds like molasses pouring out of a jug. Brother, you are from Texas. Everything you do is crazy. But if you are going where I think you are going, then count me in. You do not even know what I am planning. I do not need to know. You are my lead. Where you go, I go. That is the deal. Cole feels something loosen in his chest. Fear, maybe, or maybe just loneliness. It is good to know that he will not be alone up there. The tower clears them for takeoff. One by one, the P-47s lumber down the runway and claw their way into the sky. It takes nearly a mile for them to get airborne. Watching them from below, you would never believe that these machines were designed to fight. They look like flying whales, like airborne school buses. But Cole knows what is hiding inside his engine. 800 horses chained and waiting. All he has to do is break the wire. The flight to WWII takes nearly 2 hours. 2 hours of droning engines and endless ocean and clouds that look like mountains made of cotton. Cole uses the time to run through the plan in his head. If they have altitude advantage, we dive and run. Standard procedure. But if they catch us low, if they have the high ground, then I break the wire. I go vertical. I take the fight to them instead of running away. It sounds simple. It probably will not be. At 1000 hours, they reach the target area. The Japanese base at WWII sprawls across the jungle below a scar of runways and buildings and fuel tanks carved out of the green. Anti-aircraft guns begin to track them, black puffs of flak appearing in the sky like deadly flowers blooming. And then Cole sees them. 12 o'clock high, 20 enemy aircraft circling at 20,000 feet, Zeros and Tonys glinting in the sun like a swarm of silver wasps. And at the head of the formation, one plane with a distinctive marking. A red stripe along the fuselage. Cole's jaw tightens. He remembers that red stripe from 3 weeks ago. He remembers watching it dive on Jimmy's plane. He remembers the flash of the guns in the smoke in the long spiral down into the jungle. Red Stripe, the pilot who killed his wingman. Cole's squadron is at 15,000 feet. The Japanese have 5,000 feet of altitude advantage. In any normal engagement, this would be a death sentence. The enemy will dive, make a pass, climb back up, and repeat until every American plane is burning wreckage on the jungle floor. Standard doctrine says to dive for the deck, run for home, live to fight another day. Cole has never been very good at standard doctrine. All units, this is Ramrod lead. He keeps his voice calm, professional. Enemy formation at 12 o'clock high. Standard doctrine says we should disengage and retreat. He pauses. His hand moves toward the throttle quadrant, toward the copper wire. But I am not going to do that. I am going to climb. I am going to meet them head on. And I am going to show them what this bathtub can really do. The radio explodes with chatter. Protests, questions, disbelief. Lead, that is suicide. They have the altitude. We cannot outclimb zeros. I know, Cole replies. That is why I am breaking the wire. Silence. Dead silence. Then Bama's voice, slow and steady as always. Well, hot damn. Ramrod 2 breaking the wire. Let us see what this pig can do. One by one, the other pilots check in. Ramrod 3 breaking the wire. Ramrod 4 breaking the wire. Ramrod 5. 12 pilots, 12 decisions, 12 copper wires about to snap. Cole wraps his hand around the throttle. He can feel the resistance of the safety gate, the physical barrier that separates legal from illegal, safe from deadly. His father's wrench presses against his chest inside his flight suit. A talisman, a promise. He pushes. The copper wire stretches. It resists. For one terrible moment, Cole thinks it will not break, that the generals have won, that the rules will hold, even when survival demands they be shattered. Then there is a soft click. The wire snaps. The throttle slides through the gate and slams against the forward stop. Behind Cole's seat, the solenoid valve opens. The electric pump winds to life. 15 gallons of water and methanol spray into the supercharger, flash into steam, suck the heat out of the compressed air like a chemical miracle. The manifold pressure gauge jumps. 52 inches, 50, 60, 60, 70. The engine does not explode. It does not melt. It does not tear itself apart. It screams. 2,800 horsepower slams into Cole's back like a giant's fist. The P-47 does not accelerate like an airplane. It accelerates like a rocket. The nose pitches up and Cole pulls back on the stick, pointing the 7-ton monster straight at the sun. The G-forces crush him into his seat. The airspeed indicator climbs past 250, past 300. The altimeter spins like a clock gone mad. 15,000 feet, 16,000, 17. And above him, the Japanese formation begins to realize that something has gone terribly wrong. Hiroshi Tanaka sees it happen and does not believe his eyes. He has been flying combat missions for 4 years. He has shot down 23 enemy aircraft. He knows the P-47 better than he knows his own heartbeat. He knows exactly how fast it can climb, how quickly it can accelerate, how much altitude it can gain in a given time. The aircraft below him is not following those rules. The American lead plane should be struggling to climb. It should be wallowing in the thin air, easy prey for a diving attack. Instead, it is rising toward him like a missile, like something that has escaped from the laws of physics. Tanaka checks his own climb rate, 2,500 feet per minute, maximum performance for a zero. The P-47 is climbing faster, much faster. The 5,000-foot advantage is shrinking. 4,000, 3,000, 2,000. Impossible, Tanaka whispers. But it is happening. The Americans have changed. The bathtubs have learned to fly. He barks orders into his radio. All units break formation. Engage individually. They have something new. Do not let them get above you. But it is too late. The American planes are already among them, 12 screaming monsters trailing smoke from their exhaust engines, howling at power levels that should have torn them apart minutes ago. Tanaka rolls right and dives, trying to use the Zero's maneuverability to escape. A P-47 flashes past him so close, he can see the pilot's face through the canopy. Young, determined, terrified, and exhilarated all at once. He pulls back on his stick, trying to loop onto the American's tail. The Zero responds instantly, carving through the air like a blade. But the P-47 does not try to turn with him. It continues straight up, trading speed for altitude, then rolls inverted at the top of its climb and comes screaming back down. Tanaka has never seen this maneuver before. The American fighters are not trying to dogfight. They are using their power to yo-yo, up and down, slashing through the Japanese formation, refusing to engage in the turning battles where the Zero dominates. He throws his plane into a desperate barrel roll as tracers streak past his cockpit. The American fire is wild, but there is so much of it. 8 machine guns per plane, nearly 6,000 rounds per minute. The sky fills with lead. One of his wingmen explodes. Then another. A Tony spirals down, trailing smoke. A Zero breaks in half, the pilot tumbling free without a parachute. This is not a battle. It is a slaughter. Bobby Crawford finds himself head-to-head with a Ki-61 Tony. The Japanese fighter is coming straight at him, both pilots committed to a game of chicken at a combined closing speed of 600 miles per hour. Bama does not flinch. Bama has never flinched at anything in his life. His father used to say that Bobby Crawford came out of the womb already looking for a fight. He centers the Tony in his gun sight and squeezes the trigger. 850 caliber machine guns roar. The recoil is so powerful that the P-47 actually slows down, pushed backward by the sheer force of the bullets leaving its wings. The Tony does not burn. It does not spin away trailing smoke. It simply disintegrates. One moment it is a functioning aircraft. The next it is a cloud of debris, aluminum confetti scattered across the sky. Bama flies through the explosion, his windshield coated with oil and soot, his engine never missing a beat. "Hot damn," he yells into the radio. "This soup is the real deal." Ramrod 2 splashed one Tony. Continuing engagement. All across the sky, similar scenes play out. The American pilots have discovered that their bathtubs are not bathtubs anymore. They are predators. They are sharks in a sea of flying fish. The Japanese pilots, who have spent years perfecting the art of the turning fight, find themselves helpless against enemies who refuse to turn. Every time they try to engage, the Americans simply climb away, using their impossible power to gain altitude, then dive back down with devastating attacks. Tanaka watches his squadron die around him. 14 Zeros, 6 Tonys, 20 aircraft that launched from Rabaul this morning with confidence and pride. 8 of them are already burning wreckage in the jungle below. A P-47 drops onto his tail. Tanaka throws the Zero into the tightest turn he can manage, pulling G-forces that make his vision gray at the edges. The American does not follow the turn. He zooms up and away, trading the position for altitude. Tanaka knows what comes next. He has seen it happen 6 times in the last 10 minutes. The American will reach the top of his climb rollover and come screaming back down for another pass. He does the only thing he can do. He runs. Full throttle toward Rabaul. Forget the mission. Forget the pride. Survival is all that matters now. Behind him, the American pulls up and lets him go. There are easier targets. Wounded planes. Pilots who have not yet realized that the rules have changed. Tanaka does not look back. He flies with his heart pounding and his hands shaking and a single thought burning in his mind. They changed everything. The Americans changed everything. The battle lasts 22 minutes. When it is over, 12 American P-47s turn south toward Port Moresby. All 12 are still flying. Some are damaged, some are leaking oil or trailing smoke from bullet holes. But all 12 pilots are alive. Behind them, the sky over Wewak is littered with burning wreckage. 11 Japanese aircraft destroyed. 3 more so badly damaged they will never fly again. The greatest single-day victory for American fighters in the Southwest Pacific. Cole Thornton throttles back as they leave the combat zone. His hands are shaking. His flight suit is soaked with sweat. The water injection tank is nearly empty, less than 2 gallons remaining. He came within minutes of cooking his engine. But he is alive. His pilots are alive. And somewhere over Rabaul, a Japanese squadron leader is trying to explain to his commanders how a formation of flying bathtubs just massacred the pride of the Imperial Navy. The copper wire is broken. The secret is out. Nothing will ever be the same. 3 days later, Hiroshi Tanaka lies in a bamboo cage in an American prisoner of war camp somewhere in the New Guinea jungle. He was shot down on the second day after the disaster at WWII, caught by a P-47 while escorting a reconnaissance flight. His Zero took hits in the engine and fuel tank. He barely got the canopy open before the aircraft exploded. 3 days in the jungle. 3 days of hiding from American patrols, of eating insects and drinking rainwater, of slowly accepting that the war is over for him. Then they found him, weak, starving, half dead from dysentery and infected wounds. He expected to be tortured. That is what he was told would happen. The Americans are barbarians, his instructor said. They will hurt you. They will humiliate you. They will make you betray your emperor. Instead, they gave him medical treatment, clean bandages, quinine for the malaria that was already burning through his blood. And now he sits in a holding cell waiting to be transferred to a more permanent camp, wondering what comes next. The bamboo door opens. A young American soldier enters, carrying something that makes Tanaka's heart stop. A cup of coffee. The soldier is perhaps 25 years old with a face full of freckles and a smile that seems completely out of place in a prison camp. His name is stitched on his uniform. Miller tea coffee, the soldier says, setting the cup down in front of Tanaka. American coffee. Strong. Good. Tanaka does not understand the words, but he understands the gesture. He stares at the cup like it might be poison, or a trap, or some kind of psychological warfare. Miller pours a second cup for himself and sits down across from the prisoner. He takes a long sip, sees with satisfaction, then gestures toward Tanaka's cup. Drink. It is okay. Not poison. Tanaka hesitates. Every instinct tells him this is wrong. You do not share coffee with prisoners. You do not treat the enemy like a guest. This is not how war works. But the smell of the coffee is overwhelming, rich and bitter and impossibly real. He has not had proper coffee in months. The Japanese military runs on tea and rice and the slowly fading hope that the war will somehow end in their favor. He reaches out, picks up the cup, brings it to his lips. The taste hits him like a memory, dark and strong and slightly burned, the way Americans make it, nothing like the delicate preparations of Japan. But there is something in it, something warm, something human. Miller watches him drink, still smiling. Good, yes. Tanaka does not need to understand English to know what he is being asked. He nods. They sit in silence for a while, two men from opposite sides of the world, sharing a cup of coffee in the middle of a war that has killed millions. It should be absurd. It should be impossible. But somehow it feels like the most natural thing in the world. Finally, Tanaka speaks. Wait, it is the only English word he knows. Miller tilts his head, considering the question. Then he points at his own chest, then at Tanaka. Same. You, me, same. Just men. Tanaka freezes. He has heard those words before. 5 years ago, from a different American in a different prison on a different side of the war. Someday the war will end, and we will just be men. The cup trembles in his hands. Something is breaking inside him. Something that has been building for years, since the day he gave chocolate to an enemy pilot and could not explain why. He looks at Miller, this young American with the freckled face and the easy smile. He is not a monster. He is not a barbarian. He is just a boy far from home, trying to survive the same madness that Tanaka has been drowning in since the war began. Tanaka bows his head, and for the first time since his mother died, giving birth to Yuki, he begins to cry. Miller does not understand the tears, but he understands enough. He reaches across the table and puts a hand on Tanaka's shoulder. It is okay, he says softly. It is going to be okay. Tanaka does not know if that is true. He does not know if anything will ever be okay again. But for this moment in this bamboo hut, drinking American coffee with an enemy who treats him like a brother, he allows himself to believe. Somewhere outside, the war continues. Planes fly. Bombs fall. Men die in fire and blood and screaming metal. But in here there is only coffee, only kindness, only two men discovering that the distance between enemies is not as far as they thought. The war will end someday, and when it does, they will just be men. Cole Thornton continues to fly. In the weeks after the Battle of WWII, the copper wire becomes a memory. Orders come down from Washington with unprecedented speed. Remove all safety locks on water injection systems. Immediately. The forbidden switch is forbidden no more. Pilots who were terrified of court-martial are now encouraged to push their engines to the limit. The flying bathtubs that everyone mocked have become the most feared fighters in the Pacific. Japanese pilots report encounters with P-47s that climb like rockets and fight like demons. They do not understand how the Americans have done it. They only know that the rules have changed. Cole racks up kill after kill. 5, 10, 15, 20. 22 confirmed victories, making him one of the top aces in the Southwest Pacific. The newspapers back home call him the man who taught the bathtub to fly. They print his photograph next to stories about American ingenuity and the fighting spirit that will win the war. But Cole does not feel like a hero. He feels tired. He feels old, even though he is only 28. Every face he sees in his gun sight is someone's son, someone's brother, someone's father. The killing does not get easier. It just gets more familiar. One night, he and Bama sit on the wing of Cole's P-47, sharing a bottle of whiskey that Bama liberated from an officer's footlocker. "Do you ever think about them?" Cole asks, the Japanese. "What about them? They have families too. Mothers, wives, kids." Bama takes a long pull from the bottle and hands it to Cole. "You are getting soft, hard head. Maybe." Cole stares up at the stars. "My father told me about Christmas 1914, the trenches in France. Oh. American and German soldiers stopped fighting for one night. They sang carols. They shared food. The next morning, they went back to killing each other. So he said that was the moment he realized war is insanity. But he kept fighting anyway, because if he did not fight, someone else would have to." Bama is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "That is why you broke the wire, is it not? Not for glory, not for medals. Because if you did not figure it out, someone else would have to die trying." Cole does not answer. He does not need to. They sit in silence until the whiskey is gone and the stars begin to fade. Tomorrow there will be another mission. More killing. More faces in the gun sight. But tonight there is just the quiet and the stars and two friends who understand each other better than words can express. March 5th, 1944. Cole Thornton climbs into his P-47 for the 47th time. The engine starts with a familiar roar. The ground crew gives him a thumbs up. Kowalski stands by the wing watching with the same worried expression he always wears on mission days. It is supposed to be a routine escort. Protect the bombers. Kill anything that tries to stop them. Come home. Bama is on his wing where he has been for every mission since WWII. They do not talk much on the radio anymore. They do not need to. After 5 months of combat, they can read each other's movements like a language. The flight to the target is uneventful. Clear skies, light winds, the kind of day that makes you forget there is a war on. Then the clouds appear. They come up from nowhere, a wall of white that obscures the sun and hides everything below. Cole leads the formation through a gap, searching for clear air. He does not see the Zeros until they are already firing, 6 of them diving out of the cloud cover like ghosts. New planes, new pilots, hungry for kills. Cole braces hard at right, his hand already reaching for the throttle. The water injection engages. 2,800 horsepower screams to life. But the Japanese have learned they are not trying to turn fight. They are diving through, making slashing attacks using the clouds for cover. Hit and run. The same tactics the Americans used at WWII turned against them. A burst of 20mm cannon fire rakes Cole's cockpit. Pain, heat, the smell of blood. He looks down. His flight suit is turning red. There is a hole in his stomach that should not be there. Bama's voice on the radio, high and panicked. "Lead lead, you are hit. Eject, eject." Cole tries to assess the damage. Bad. Really bad. He has maybe minutes before shock sets in and he loses consciousness. He could eject. Pop the canopy, pull the handle, trust the parachute to bring him down. Maybe he would survive. Maybe he would be captured. Maybe he would see Texas again. But below him, through a break in the clouds, he sees something. American soldiers, a patrol, pinned down by Japanese fire on a jungle hilltop. He can see the muzzle flashes. He can see the desperate radio antenna waving for air support. If he ejects now, those men will die. No one else is close enough to help them. Bama Cole says, his voice surprisingly steady. "I am not ejecting. There are boys on the ground who need help. Cole, you are bleeding out. You cannot. I can, and I will. Cover me. He rolls the P-47 into a dive. The world tilts. Blood runs down his legs and pools on the cockpit floor. His vision is starting to narrow, darkness creeping in from the edges. He does not aim for the Japanese planes. He aims for the ground, for the enemy positions that are killing his countrymen. The 8 machine guns roar. 50 caliber rounds tear through the jungle, shredding trees and soldiers and everything in their path. The enemy fire stops. Cole pulls up, or tries to. His hands are weak. His arms feel like they are made of lead. 1-0 goes down, then another. He is not sure if he hit them or if Bama did. It does not matter. The engine coughs, sputters, the manifold pressure is dropping. He is running out of fuel, running out of water, running out of everything. Bama is screaming at him to eject. The soldiers on the ground are safe now, running for cover, saved by an angel they will never meet. Cole looks at his father's wrench, still tucked in his flight suit pocket. The metal is slick with blood. I fixed it, Dad. I fixed it. The P-47 noses over. The jungle rushes up to meet him. There is no explosion, no fire. Just the sound of metal tearing through trees and then silence. Cole Thornton never ejects. Cole Thornton never surrenders. Cole Thornton goes home the only way a Thornton knows how, fighting until the very end. The telegram arrives on a Tuesday morning in April of 1944. Eleanor Thornton is feeding the chickens when she sees the Army Jeep pull up to the gate of the ranch. She does not stop what she is doing. She does not run toward the vehicle or wave at the 2 men in uniform who step out. She simply continues scattering feed across the dusty ground, watching the hens peck and scratch, pretending that her hands are not shaking. She has been expecting this moment for 2 years. Ever since Cole shipped out, she has rehearsed it in her mind. The Jeep, the uniforms, the careful expressions on the faces of men trained to deliver the worst news a mother can receive. She has imagined it so many times that now, watching it happen in real life, she feels almost calm. The officers approach slowly, their boots crunching on the gravel path. They are young, younger than Cole. They probably drew the short straw back at the base, got assigned to casualty notification duty, spent the whole drive out here dreading this conversation. She sets down the feed bucket and wipes her hands on her apron. She stands straight. She is a Thornton. Thorntons do not crumble. Mrs. Thornton, the taller officer, speaks first. His voice cracks slightly on the second syllable. Yes, ma'am, we regret to inform you. She holds up her hand. The officer stops mid-sentence, confused. Did he die fighting? The officers exchange glances. Ma'am, my son, did he die fighting or did he die running? The shorter officer steps forward. He is holding a folder, official documents, the paperwork of death. Ma'am, your son was a hero. He was wounded in combat but refused to eject. He used his final moments to provide air support for a ground unit that was pinned down by enemy fire. He saved 11 American soldiers before his aircraft went down. He has been recommended for the Medal of Honor. Eleanor nods slowly. She looks out across the ranch at the fields her husband cleared with his own hands, at the house where she raised 5 boys and buried 2 of them before they were old enough to shave. Did you find him? Not yet, ma'am. The jungle is very dense. Search parties are still looking, but he trails off. They both know what he means. The jungle of New Guinea does not give up its dead easily. Men disappear into that green hell and are never seen again. Eleanor is quiet for a long moment. Then she speaks, her voice steady as bedrock. Do not look anymore. Leave him there. That is his home now, the WWII. The officers do not know what to say. They stand in awkward silence, clutching their folder full of condolences and official sympathy. Eleanor turns back to her chickens. She picks up the feed bucket. She scatters another handful of grain across the ground. You can go now, she says. Thank you for coming. The officers retreat to their Jeep. They drive away, leaving a cloud of dust that hangs in the still Texas air like a ghost. Eleanor finishes feeding the chickens. She walks back to the house. She sits down at the kitchen table where Cole used to eat his breakfast, where she used to scold him for putting his elbows on the wood, where she taught him to read and write and count. And then finally, alone in the quiet of her empty home, Eleanor Thornton allows herself to cry. She cries for an hour. Great heaving sobs that shake her entire body, that leave her breathless and hollow and completely drained. She cries for Cole and for his father and for the two brothers who came before all the men she has loved and lost to war and sickness and the cruel randomness of the universe. When she is finished, she wipes her eyes and stands up. She walks to Cole's old room untouched since the day he left. His model airplanes still hang from the ceiling. His high school football trophies still line the shelf. His bed is still made with the same quilt she sewed for his 12th birthday. She opens the closet and finds what she is looking for. A shoebox full of letters. Every letter Cole sent home from basic training, from advanced flight school, from the distant jungle bases of the Pacific. She has saved them all. She sits on the bed and begins to read. Hours pass. The sun moves across the sky and sets, leaving the room in shadow. Eleanor does not turn on the light. She just keeps reading, hearing her son's voice in every word, feeling his presence in the careful handwriting that looks so much like his father's. The last letter is dated February 28, 1944, 5 days before he died. Dear Mom, it begins. I know I do not write as often as I should. Things have been busy here. We have been flying almost every day, sometimes twice a day. The boys are tired, but the mood is good. We are winning. Everyone can feel it. I want to tell you something. Remember how Dad used to say that nothing is unfixable? I think about that a lot up here. Every time I climb into the cockpit, I think about that wrench he gave me. I still carry it with me. It is my good luck charm. There was a problem with these planes when I first got here. They were too slow, too heavy. The brass had a solution, but they were too scared to use it. So I used it for them. I broke the rules, Mom. I did something they told me not to do. And it worked. It saved lives. I do not know if that makes me a hero or just stubborn. Probably both. You always said I got my stubbornness from Dad. I guess you were right. I miss you. I miss the ranch. I miss the way the sky looks at sunset over the panhandle. When this is over, I am coming home, and I am never leaving again. I am going to fix up that old tractor, and we are going to have the best cattle ranch in Texas. I love you, Mom. I will see you soon. Your son Cole. Eleanor holds the letter against her chest. She closes her eyes and imagines her son sitting in a cockpit somewhere over the Pacific, writing these words by flashlight, thinking about home. He never came back. He never fixed the tractor. He never saw another Texas sunset. But he died the way he lived. Stubborn, brave, fighting until the very end. That is the Thornton way. That is enough. On the other side of the world, in a hospital ship anchored off the coast of New Guinea, Hiroshi Tanaka lies in a narrow bunk and stares at the ceiling. He has been a prisoner of the Americans for 6 months. In that time, he has been transferred 3 times, interrogated twice, and treated for malaria, dysentery, and a bullet wound in his shoulder that became infected in the jungle. He has lost 30 pounds. His hair has started to turn gray. He looks 20 years older than he did the day he was shot down. But he is alive. Against all odds and expectations, he is alive. The Americans have not tortured him. They have not beaten him or starved him or forced him to betray his country. They have given him food and medicine and a bed to sleep in. They have treated him like a human being. He does not understand it. Everything he was taught about the enemy has proven to be wrong. The barbarians, the monsters, the soulless killers who would show no mercy to a captured Japanese pilot. Instead, they gave him coffee. He thinks about Private Miller every day. The young soldier with the freckled face who sat with him in that bamboo hut and shared a cup of American coffee like they were old friends instead of enemies. He wonders where Miller is now. He wonders if he survived the war. He wonders if he ever thinks about the Japanese pilot he showed kindness to in the middle of hell. A nurse enters the ward. She is American young, with blonde hair pinned up under her cap. She checks his vitals, changes his bandages, asks him in broken Japanese if he is feeling any pain. He shakes his head. No pain, not physically anyway. The nurse smiles at him before she leaves. It is a genuine smile, warm and friendly, the kind of smile you give to a patient you have grown to care about. Not the smile you give to an enemy. Tanaka closes his eyes and thinks about home, about Yuki, about the pocket watch that he gave her before he left, the last piece of their father that either of them still possessed. He wonders if she knows he is alive. He wonders if she thinks he is dead. He wonders if she has given up hope. The war will end someday. That is what the American pilot told him in China. That is what Private Miller told him in the prison camp. The war will end, and they will just be men. Tanaka is starting to believe it. The war ends in August of 1945. Tanaka is repatriated to Japan in March of 1946. He steps off the transport ship in Yokohama Harbor and stands for a long moment looking at the ruins of his country. The cities are rubble. The factories are ash. The proud empire that sent him to war has been reduced to begging for food from the same enemy it once swore to destroy. Yuki is waiting for him at the dock. She has aged 10 years in the 4 years since he left. Her eyes are hollow. Her cheeks are sunken. But when she sees him walking down the gangway, something lights up in her face that makes all the horror and suffering and loss worthwhile. They embrace without words. Brother and sister survivors of a catastrophe that killed millions, holding each other in the shadow of a broken nation. She gives him back the pocket watch. It is still keeping perfect time. Tanaka never speaks about the war. Not to Yuki, not to the woman he marries 3 years later, a quiet schoolteacher named Michiko, who never asks about the scars on his body or the nightmares that wake him screaming in the middle of the night. Not to his 2 daughters, Keiko and Yoko, who grow up knowing only that their father was a pilot once a long time ago before they were born. He becomes a mathematics teacher at a high school in the suburbs of Tokyo. He wears plain clothes and speaks in a soft voice and never raises his hand against his students, no matter how badly they behave. He is known as a gentle man, a patient man, a man who seems to carry a great sadness that he never explains. Every night before he goes to sleep, he takes out a small journal and writes a few lines. He has been keeping this journal since 1943, since the nights before the Battle of WWII, since the moment he realized that the war was going to change him in ways he could not predict. He writes about the P-47s that climbed like rockets, about the American coffee that tasted like forgiveness, about the pilot with the red hair who led the charge on October 11th, the one the Americans called Hardhead, the one who taught him that courage does not belong to any single nation. He writes about the day he learned that pilot had died. March 5th, 1944, shot down over WWII, refused to eject, saved 11 men with his final breath. Tanaka never knew Cole Thornton's name while they were both alive. They met only once in the chaos of combat, 2 men trying to kill each other across a sky filled with fire. But somehow across the distance of death and years, Cole Thornton became the most important person in Hiroshi Tanaka's life. The man who changed everything. The man who proved that the rules can be broken. The man who showed mercy in the middle of madness by shooting down zeros instead of executing prisoners, by fighting with honor instead of cruelty. Tanaka keeps his journal in a locked wooden box under his bed. He never shows it to anyone. It is his private confession, his secret history, the story of how a watchmaker's son became a killer and then became a man again. He does not expect anyone to ever read it. In 1985, Keiko Tanaka is cleaning out her parents' bedroom while her father recovers from a mild heart attack in the hospital. Her mother has been dead for 3 years. The house is too big for an old man living alone, and the family has decided to move him to a smaller apartment closer to Keiko's home. She finds the wooden box under the bed. It is locked, but the lock is old and weak, and it gives way easily when she pries at it with a screwdriver. Inside, she finds the journal. She sits on her father's bed and begins to read. Hours pass. The light changes. Her husband calls twice, and she ignores him both times. The journal spans 42 years. It begins with a young pilot preparing for his first major battle and ends with an old man reflecting on the grandchildren he never expected to have. In between, there is war and imprisonment and coffee and kindness in a slow, painful journey from hatred to understanding. And there is a name that appears again and again, a name that Keiko has never heard before. Thornton, hardhead, red hair, lead pilot, October 11th of 43. She reads about her father watching this man's plane climb impossibly fast, breaking all the rules of physics. She reads about the respect her father felt for an enemy who fought with such ferocity and skill. She reads about the day her father learned that Thornton had died and the single sentence he wrote in response. I hope he died like a man. I believe he did. Keiko closes the journal. Her hands are trembling. Her father has been carrying this weight for 40 years, alone in silence, never sharing it with anyone. She goes to the hospital that afternoon. Her father is awake, sitting up in bed, looking frail but alert. I found your journal, she says. Tanaka's face goes pale. His hands grip the bed sheets. I found it and I read it. All of it. She expects him to be angry, to demand that she leave, to retreat into the silence that has defined him for as long as she can remember. Instead, he begins to cry. The tears come slowly at first, then faster until he is sobbing like a child. Keiko climbs onto the bed and holds him, this old man, who never cried, this gentle father, who kept his pain locked in a wooden box for 4 decades. I am sorry, he whispers. I am sorry for everything. She does not know what he is apologizing for. The killing, the silence, the years of hiding, all of it maybe, all the weight he has been carrying alone. It is okay, she says. It is going to be okay. It is the same thing Private Miller said to him in 1943 in a bamboo prison cell over a cup of American coffee. It is going to be okay. The letter arrives in October of 2018. Tanaka is 95 years old. He has survived 2 more heart attacks, a stroke, and the death of his wife, his sister, and most of his friends from the war. He uses a wheelchair now. His hands shake constantly. His memory comes and goes like the tide. But when Keiko reads him the letter from America, his eyes become clear and sharp in a way she has not seen in years. Dear Mr. Hiroshi Tanaka, the letter begins. My name is Sarah Thornton. I am the granddaughter of Colonel Cole Thornton, a P-47 pilot who was killed in action on March 5, 1944 over New Guinea. Tanaka's breath catches in his throat. Keiko continues reading. I am a history teacher at a high school in Texas. Last year, while cleaning out my grandmother's house after she passed away, I found my grandfather's personal journal from the war. In it, he describes a Japanese pilot with a red stripe on his fuselage who led the enemy formation on October 11, 1943. He called this pilot the best he ever faced. He wrote that he respected him. He wrote that in another life they might have been friends. After years of research, I believe that pilot was you. Tanaka is weeping now, silent tears rolling down his weathered cheeks. Next year, the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum will host an exhibition about the P-47 Thunderbolt, commemorating the 76th anniversary of what my grandfather called the day the copper wire was broken. They have invited me to speak, and I would like to invite you, not as a former enemy, but as a pilot meeting the family of another pilot. My grandfather carried a wrench that belonged to his father through the entire war. We never found it. It went down with him in the jungle. But we found something else. We found his respect for you. The war ended 74 years ago. Perhaps it is time for us to just be people. Sincerely, Sarah Thornton. Tanaka sits in silence for a long time after Keiko finishes reading. His eyes are fixed on something far away, something only he can see. Finally, he speaks. The same words, the same message. Across 74 years and 2 continents. Same. You, me. Same. Just men. He looks at his daughter. Book a flight, he says. I am going to America. The Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum is crowded on this October morning in 2019. School groups mill about taking photographs of rockets and capsules and the artifacts of a century of flight. Veterans in baseball caps wander slowly past exhibits, remembering wars that most of the visitors have only read about in books. In front of a Republic P-47, Thunderbolt restored to pristine condition and displayed behind velvet ropes, a small crowd is gathered. Hiroshi Tanaka sits in his wheelchair, 96 years old, wearing a dark suit and his Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service medal. Beside him stands Keiko, holding his hand. Across from them, Sarah Thornton waits with her own family. She has red hair the color of fire, the same shade that her grandfather was famous for. She has his jaw, his stubborn set of the shoulders, his clear blue eyes that seem to look right through you. They have exchanged letters. They have spoken on video calls. But this is the first time they have met in person, the granddaughter of the American ace and the pilot who tried to kill him 76 years ago. Sarah steps forward. Tanaka raises his trembling hand. Mr. Tanaka, she says, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. His English is heavily accented but clear. He has been practicing for months, rehearsing the words he wants to say. Sarah kneels down so she is at eye level with his wheelchair. Around them, the crowd watches in silence. Some of them are crying. Some of them do not fully understand what they are witnessing, but all of them feel it, the weight of history, the presence of something larger than themselves. My grandfather wrote about you, Sarah says. He called you the clock. He said you never made a mistake in the air. Tanaka nods slowly. I made one mistake. I underestimated him. I thought the P-47 was slow. I thought the Americans were predictable. He proved me wrong. The copper wire. Yes, the copper wire. He broke it. He changed everything. Sarah reaches out and takes his hand. The skin is paper thin, spotted with age, but his grip is surprisingly strong. He saved 11 men the day he died, she says. Did you know that I read about it? After the war, I learned everything I could about him. I wanted to understand the man who defeated me. He did not defeat you. He taught you. Tanaka considers this for a moment. Then he nods. Yes, he taught me that rules are made to be broken. He taught me that courage has no nationality. He taught me that enemies can become brothers if they are willing to see each other as men. He reaches into his jacket pocket with his free hand. His fingers close around something small and cold. This belonged to my father, he says, pulling out the pocket watch. He made it with his own hands. It has never lost a second in 96 years. I have carried it through war and imprisonment in 74 years of peace. He holds it out to Sarah. I want you to have it. Sarah stares at the watch. She does not understand. Why? Because your grandfather and I shared the same squammo. We breathed the same air. We fought with everything we had. And in the end, we were both just men trying to survive. This watch has measured every second of my life. Now I want it to measure yours. Sarah takes the watch with trembling hands. She turns it over, looking at the intricate engravings, the worn brass case, the craftsmanship of a Tokyo watchmaker who died before either of them was born. I do not know what to say. Tanaka smiles. It is the smile of a man who has made peace with his past, who has finally set down a burden he has carried for 76 years. Say that you will remember us, both of us, your grandfather and me. Say that you will tell our story. Sarah nods, tears streaming down her face. I will. I promise. She reaches into her own bag and pulls out a photograph. It is old and faded, a black and white image of a young man in a flight suit standing next to a P-47 Thunderbolt. He is holding a wrench, grinning at the camera, looking impossibly young and alive. We never found the wrench, Sarah says. It is still out there somewhere in the jungle. But we found this photograph. My grandmother kept it in her Bible for 75 years. She hands it to Tanaka. That is him. That is Cole Thornton. That is my grandfather. Tanaka takes the photograph with reverent hands. He stares at the face of the man he tried to kill, the man who changed his life, the man he never met, but somehow knows better than anyone. He looks happy. Tanaka whispers. He was. He wrote letters home about breaking the wire. He was proud of what he did. He should be. He was a warrior, a true warrior. Tanaka holds the photograph against his chest right next to his heart. Thank you, he says. Thank you for this. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for giving me a chance to say goodbye. Sarah puts her hand on his shoulder. It is not goodbye, she says. It is hello. After 76 years, we are finally meeting. The war is over, and we are just people now. Tanaka looks up at the P-47 looming above them. The massive fighter that terrified him once, that changed everything he believed about war and power and possibility. Brothers of the sky, he murmurs. Yes, brothers of the sky. They stayed like that for a long moment, and an old Japanese pilot and a young American woman connected across generations and oceans and the vast gulf of history. Around them, cameras flash and reporters scribble notes, and 100 strangers watch something that should have been impossible. An enemy becoming a friend, a war becoming a memory, a copper wire becoming a bridge. The sun streams through the museum windows, illuminating the P-47 in a shaft of golden light. It looks almost alive, as if it might roar to life at any moment and climb back into the sky where it belongs. But its flying days are over. It is a monument now, a reminder of what was lost and what was won and what can never be forgotten. The war ended 76 years ago. The pilots who fought it are almost all gone. Soon there will be no one left who remembers what it was like to climb into a cockpit and face death at 400 miles per hour. But the stories remain, the lessons endure. The courage of men like Cole Thornton and Hiroshi Tanaka echoes across the decades, reminding us that even in the darkest times, humanity can find a way to survive. Cole Thornton broke a copper wire in 1943. It was such a small thing, a piece of metal no thicker than a hair. But in breaking it, he changed the course of a war. He saved thousands of lives. He proved that rules written by men in comfortable offices do not always apply to men fighting for survival in the sky. He never knew that Hiroshi Tanaka survived. He never knew that a cup of American coffee in a jungle prison camp would plant a seed of redemption that would grow for 76 years. He never knew that someday his granddaughter would stand in a museum in Washington and hold hands with the pilot he respected most. But maybe he knew something else. Maybe in those final moments as his wounded plane descended toward the jungle, he understood that his story was not ending. It was just beginning. Stories do not die with the men who live them. They pass from generation to generation, changing shape, but never losing their power. They become legends. They become lessons. They become the foundation upon which the future is built. Today, there are only a handful of P-47 Thunderbolts still capable of flight. When you see one at an air show, it looks impossibly large. The engine does not whine like a jet. It barks. It shakes the ground. It smells of oil and high-octane gasoline and the ghosts of men who flew it into hell and back. If you look closely at the cockpit on the left side of the throttle quadrant, you might see where a copper wire once wrapped around a forbidden switch. The wire is gone now. It has been gone for 76 years. But the memory of what it meant, of what it took to break it, lives on. Cole Thornton was not a perfect man. He was stubborn and reckless and probably too brave for his own good. But when the moment came when the rules failed and survival demanded something more, he did not hesitate. He pushed the throttle through the gate. He snapped the wire. He flew into the teeth of the enemy and dared them to stop him. Hiroshi Tanaka was not a villain. He was a watchmaker's son who became a warrior, who killed for his country, who carried the weight of that killing for the rest of his life. But when an American soldier offered him coffee instead of cruelty, he found the courage to accept it. He found the strength to change. They were enemies. They were warriors. They were men. And in the end, that is all any of us are. If this story has moved you, take a moment to remember the generation that lived it. The pilots who climbed into cockpits knowing they might not return. The mothers who sent their sons to war and waited for letters that sometimes never came. The engineers who pushed the boundaries of what was possible. The soldiers who showed mercy when mercy was the hardest choice. They are almost all gone now, but their legacy remains. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Tell them about the copper wire. Tell them about the coffee. Tell them about two men who met as enemies and became brothers across the span of decades. And the next time someone tells you that something is impossible, that the rules cannot be broken, that the way things are is the way things must always be, remember Cole Thornton. Remember the day he sat in a cockpit over New Guinea watching the enemy close in, knowing that the safe choice was also the wrong choice. Remember the moment he wrapped his hand around the throttle and felt the resistance of the copper wire. Remember the click as it snapped. And remember that history is not made by those who follow the rules. History is made by those who have the courage to break them. We will see you in the next video.